Hey, what's up everybody? I'd like to welcome you to another Juice tutorial and a happy new year to you. This is the first tutorial for 2019, and I'd like to just take a really quick moment to thank everybody that has supported the audio programmer and the channel and the community up to this point. The support has been really strong, and we just hope to keep on building this for the new year. So I'm not going to really get into that because it's supposed to be a tutorial, but maybe I'll do a separate video on kind of a 2018 recap or something like that. So before we get started, if you like this tutorial, be sure to give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment on it with any sort of feedback, positive or constructive. We're always looking to try to make these tutorials better. So we really appreciate your feedback. So yeah. Be sure to let us know what you think. So this tutorial is going to be on improvements to the audio processor value tree state class. So this is the class that Juce uses in order to create parameters. So you have parameters that you can modify over time, like let's say a filter cutoff. You want your user to be able to modify that over time and create automation, and have a little drop down menu where it says filter cutoff, where they can choose that and then basically change that over time. And so this is how we create those sort of parameters. And it's also a way for us within our plugin to be able to pass these values around between what's happening with the UI and what's happening behind the scenes with the processor. So if you're not sure exactly what I'm talking about, that's okay. I would advise you strongly to go back to Juice tutorial 13, which is audio plugin basics, and just basically watch that one, and then probably the next 3 or 4 ones that talk about the plugin, the difference between the editor and the processor. And then we have another one, which is, let's see here. So we have, this is mainly an update to Juice tutorial 16, which is creating plugin parameters for user automation. So this is an update to that because we have some breaking changes that have happened with the audio processor value tree state. So this has changed, and we're going to update that. So this is a subject that has come up a couple times in our Discord discussion group, and so I thought I'd do a tutorial just to show you the breaking changes, the old way of how we used to do things, and then now how we need to change that to make it the right way. What I've done is I've created a small little project. It's just a gain tutorial. Once again, it's just based on that Juice tutorial 13 and 14, which is a slider that turns volume up and down. It's about the most simple type of plugin that you can create. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the old way of how things were done, which I have here, and I've also got it on a I've uploaded it to a Git repo, and I'll put the link to that below so you can follow along and make the changes along with me. And let's see. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to walk you through this really quick. So we just have 2 defines called gain ID and gain name. That's just so I don't have to type in, so I don't get mixed up. And when I'm looking for a parameter ID, I can just type gain ID, and I know that that's what I'm referring to. If we go down to our constructor here, then we can see that the old way that we had it initialized using tree state. So we have an audio processor value tree state object called tree state. We have initialized that using the initializer list. This is the old way of how we used to do it. And then what we used to have to do is we had to use this method called create and add parameter. And then we had all of these different parameters that we had to add in order to be able to add this. Now, if we scroll down a little bit further to our process block, then we will see that we are just naming a variable where we get the value from the gain ID, and then we are using that to turn the volume of the incoming audio up and down. Once again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about there and you're not sure what I mean by that, make sure that you go back to those other tutorials, because I go through all of this stuff in just in very fine detail. So make sure you go through that first and you know what I'm talking about, or else you'll probably be a little bit lost in this tutorial. So if we go over to the editor side here, really quick, there was an error that came up commonly in the tutorials, and where they were saying that they were basically getting a crash when they would close the UI, and we're going to go ahead and fix that too, and I'll show you why that was happening. So we'll go ahead and we'll start there. So the first thing that we have is that, as we went through in the first audio processor value tree state tutorial, we have two sides that we need to create in order to create an audio processor value tree state. So you have the parameter that we have on the processor side, and then we have the attachment that we have on the UI side. So the idea is that when a user changes a parameter on the UI, that this attachment will relay the value change over to the processor side, and then the tree state captures that, and then we can get the value of what the user changed it to, which would be here, and then we would just use that in our actual audio callback. So first thing that we want to do is this scoped pointer is actually deprecated, but before I do that, I'm going to tell you why it was crashing for so many people, and this was a mistake that I made. The reason that it was crashing is that because when your plugin destructs, when you close your plugin, what happens is that each one of these destructs from the bottom up. So the first thing that destroys is the gain slider. Then you've got this object that destroys, and then the slider value. Now the problem is that we don't want this slider attachment to destroy itself before the slider itself. Okay, so we need this to destruct before the slider. So in order to do that, so the way that things destruct is from the bottom up. Okay, so what I need to do is I actually need to put this below the gain slider. So I'm just going to cut that out of here. As you can see, we got public access, and we still want public access because we need our processor to be able to get the value. So what I could do is I could just actually just put public here, and then I can paste that like that. Okay, so now that's going to destruct in the right order. The slider attachment destructs, then the slider itself destructs. So now, as I said before, scoped pointer is now deprecated in Juce, and you can find out more information about that on the Juce forum if you'd like. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually change this to a STD unique pointer. So we could go STD unique pointer. It never does my autocomplete when I'm in the middle of a tutorial. So it's just basically all the same stuff here. So we got this, and then I can just get rid of the scoped pointer like so. Okay, so now we're like this. Now, when we actually allocate memory, so if you know about pointers, then the pointer is allocating memory. When you go to allocate the memory on the heap here using new, that's changed as well. So when we're using a unique pointer, we can just do we can use the make unique method. As you can see, it's complaining here, and it's saying that this ain't the right, we're not making the right call here. So what we need to say here is slider value equals stood make unique. Then we got audio. This is what we call it, audio processor value straight tree slider attachment object. And then our arguments here, we're just going to cut and paste just like so. Okay, so now we can just get rid of this. Okay, so that should be fine now. So that's our slider attachment set up. And as I said, this is what's allocating the memory on the heap for our slider attachment. So now what we need to do is we need to go to our processor side and we need to update our value tree state. So as I said, here's where we've created our object, the tree state object here. Now, if you go here and you notice here, we have a little warning. It says create and add parameter is deprecated. And if we tried to run this right now, I'm not going to do it, but if we tried to compile, it would compile, but once we tried to open the plugin, it would actually say it actually wouldn't work properly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the documentation here to help us update this method. So if you look down here, so we have our constructors. So this is what we need to do to initialize our tree state. So you can see here that the old one that I used, where I have the processor object, which is this, a pointer to this, and then the undo manager, which I have pointing to nothing. And if we look at the documentation here, we can see that it says this constructor is discouraged and will be deprecated in a future version of Juce. Use the other constructor instead. So that's what we're going to do. So now I'm just going to copy these arguments here. So this is our other constructor that we're going to use. And I'm just going to paste that here. So now we have processor to connect to. So I'm going to do this. Then it says undo manager to use. I'm going to do null pointer. So we're not going to use an undo manager. So now it's going to say here const juice identifier and value tree type. So obviously I've gone through this myself before, but let's just say that I don't know what that is. And for people that may be starting off, just starting off with Juce, and you say, okay, juice identifier, I don't know what that is, right? So then what we would do is we would just go to the Juce API here, and then we would just go to identifier, and it says represents a string identifier, right? So this is just what we're going to call the tree state. Like if we want to refer to the tree state, what's a string name that we can call it? Because what we could do is we could actually, if we had more than one processor that we were using within our application, then we might have multiple tree states. So we need to know which one that we're referring to. So we'll just call this params or parameters. Parameter, right? So that's a string, that's fine. Then we have this one that says parameter layout. Okay, well, what's that? Well, let's have a look and see. So I thought I had, yeah, here we go. So this says a class to contain a set of ranged audio parameters and audio processor parameter groups. So as you can see, this is where we would actually put all of our parameters. So where we were before, where we were creating and adding parameters, we would put all of that here now. So I'm just going to comment those out for a second. Luckily, on the audio processor value tree state documentation, if we scroll down a little bit, we will see that they've actually given us a nice little kind of example of how to do this, right? So we can see here that we could just do it like this, right? So let's just try that first, okay? Where we would just say, so we see here that we have a lot of different types of parameters that we could use. We got audio parameter float, you got audio parameter int, you could use audio parameter Boolean, you could use audio parameter choice. So this is for stuff like checkboxes and menus and things like that. But we're doing a gain slider value, so we're going to use audio parameter float, right? So we're going to have to, so what we're going to do is this one, we're going to just do like this, and then we're going to add our first parameter here, which is going to be a unique pointer. And then this is going to be an audio parameter float. And then we have different arguments that we have arguments that we need to put in here. So there's a really long one here that we can use. I'm going to use just this short one, so you can see we have two different types of constructors here that we could use. We're just going to use this one here. I'm just going to copy this like so. Since it's within a pointer, it doesn't autocomplete for us nicely. So here we're just going to use the defines that I pointed out earlier in the tutorial: gain ID, gain name, right? So we got gain ID, gain name, minimum value I'm going to just put at minus 48 dB. The F is just to make sure that it doesn't get casted as a double or anything, that it stays as a float. And then we got max value we're going to put at 0.0. And then the default value, let's just put at minus 15. Make sure you don't get these wrong, because if you do, it'll kind of blow your eardrum out when you try to play it, and it's not a very pleasant sound. So that should be fine, right? So basically within these curly brackets here, you would put all of your different parameters. Okay, so instead of using the create and add parameter method here, so we could just actually get rid of that, right? So if I wanted to add another parameter, like let's just say for example's sake, then I wanted to add another one, I would just do that like that. See, just like that. And then I would list them all, just one after the other, just like that. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to do that, because as you can see, if you have like 10 parameters or 50 parameters, that would get quite long. So I'll show you another place that we could put that in just a second. So let's just make sure that we have everything right. So we got decibels to gain here. So that's going to take our decibel, so our number, and it's going to convert it to a gain number between 0 and 1. Okay, so I'm just going to compile here, and we should be good to go. Okay, cut off my sound there for a second. So let's go here. I'm going to add this now. Just going to turn it on. There's our UI. So now I'm going to add the audio file player here. And I'm going to just add an audio file here. Just add anything. Here we go, some Anderson pack. So I'm just going to turn this down because I'm in my headphones. Don't want my ears to blow out if I got this wrong. So as you can see, it works. So let's just turn it up. There you go. It works. Pretty simple, right? So, so that's the only thing that you got to do. The only new thing that you got to do. But now let's talk about a way, like if we wanted to create a bunch of these parameters, right? This is something that I got from Tom Poole, who's one of the senior developers that works on the Juce framework. Hi, Tom, if you're watching this. Tom is the man. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a method here. I'm going to add it up a little bit above here. I'm going to put it just right below the destructor here. So let's go over here. We're going to add it here. So now let's just think about this, right? I think this is actually shown here, right? So here's I think Tom actually wrote this. So it just says, okay, so we're going to create a method, right? It's going to call create parameter layout. And what we're going to do, so we want the return type to be a parameter layout because that's what we need to put in to our arguments for our value tree state, right? So instead of having this here, we just need to have the name of our parameter layout. So we're going to create one, right? And then this is so this is just like creating your parameters. I'll show you how to do this. So what we need is we need a method where we're going to call this audio processor value tree state parameter layout, right? Is that right? Parameter layout. Create. What do you call it? Create parameter layout. All right, so I'm just going to call that. Okay, so our return type is going to be an audio processor value tree state parameter layout, right? So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to copy this. I know some of you more experienced users are probably thinking, why is he going so slow? Well, because there are a lot of people in here that are just beginning, so just bear with me, because I mean I'm just starting too. So what we need is our fully qualified class, which is this gain tutorial audio 3 audio processor, and then we call it create parameter layout. Okay, that could be a little bit confusing if you're just starting, but that's the correct way to do it. Okay, you have your return type, and then you have your fully qualified class, and then you have your method name. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create a parameter layout. Okay, so the way that he's done it is he's used a vector of unique pointers, right? So I'm going to do this a little bit differently than how he did it here, because he's got here audio parameter int, and what we need is audio parameter float. But you can actually do this in a way that will take all of the different audio parameters, whether it's a bool or a choice or an int or a float. Okay, so we could do that here. So we'll do std vector. And then this is audio processor value tree state. And then this is going to be called, actually, I don't even think I need this. Sorry about that. I think it's called ranged audio parameter. Yeah. So if I go here, you can see ranged audio parameter kind of encompasses all of these things. So you can see here we got int, float, choice, and bool, all kind of pointing there to the parameters. That means that this is a superclass. Is that right? Superclass of bool, choice, float, and int. I hope I got that right. So, and this needs to be a unique pointer as well. So let's do this, unique pointer. And then this is a ranged audio parameter. Okay. And then I'm going to just call this params. So this is our container where we're going to put all of our different parameters, right? So now I'm going to just create a variable that will be this our gain ID now, right? So I'm just going to call this. Now we're going to use the auto keyword here, right? So it deduces the return type for us. So we're going to call this gain. Let's just call it game param, right? And then I can just say like that, right? So we're just going to call this auto game param is our pointer. Now what we need to do is we need to add this, push it back into our vector. So we can do this more efficiently. Right? I'm going to show you the more efficient way to do this. So we could actually do like params.pushback, right? Most of you would probably know what that's all about. And normally we could just say game param, right? And that's fine. I believe that'll actually work. But I don't know, it doesn't work actually. So what we might need to actually use this method. So it's called std_move. And then let's see if that works. And then we need our return type. Yeah. So std_move actually moves. It actually doesn't copy. So normally if you do push back, this is my understanding. I'm kind of a beginner at this. So my understanding is that if you're doing just a push back operation, you would need to actually copy the this object here, and then it would basically copy over, and then it would delete. Well, std_move actually is able to just move that information over without actually copying it, so it makes it more efficient, basically. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong about that, or if there's a better way to explain it, feel free to comment and correct me. I'm always trying to learn. So now we need to just return this as a parameter layout. So we could just say return params.begin, right? So we're just going to return this vector params.end. And then what we could just say here, when we want our layout up here in our constructor for our tree state, we could just say create parameter layout, right? So now let's see if this actually will work. Hopefully, fingers crossed, or I'll have to do all of this again. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to pop open the UI here. So nothing's crashed just yet, which is a positive sign. And then I'm just going to add my audio file player. Just going to plug these in real quick. Then I'm going to load up the song. I'm going to turn this down so hopefully it doesn't blow my ears out. Boom, there you see it works. So I hope you found this tutorial really helpful for you. Once again, all we did there was we just went through the new way of creating an audio processor value tree state and how to initialize those parameters. And we created a really quick method there, create parameter layout, and where we created a vector of ranged audio parameters. And then we created our what's it called? I'm losing my head here. Our parameter, and then we just pushed it back into the vector, and then we just added the whole list, so we could add as many as we wanted there, and we would just push all those back, and then we would just add that, and then just call this method. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions or anything, just feel free to comment in the video, or to join our Discord our Discord chat platform, where we're able to help each other out. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time.